Okay, welcome to the second video on writing or outlining your essay for your characterization essay on Forrest Gump. Again, this is the second video. The first video was on outlining your introduction. But today we're going to be talking about body paragraphs. So before we begin, you're going to need to have two very important documents open. First, you're going to have this document open, your note-taking and characterization chart that you did for the film. So you're going to want to have that open. And you're also going to want to have your essay outline open too, the two documents that we were working for from on the other day. So if you don't have these two documents open, I want you to pause the video now and open those documents. Okay, you're back, so I'm assuming that you have both of these documents open, your note-taking chart and your characterization outline. Right? Now, as you know, the outline is where we're going to be kind of putting our essay together. So if you look, this outline has a completed introduction. My introduction is already done because that's what we did in the previous video. I have my attention-grabbing sentence, I have my background information, and I have my paper's main thesis statement. Now, if your outline does not look like this, if it's not complete, that means that you are on the wrong video, which means you want to go back to the first video that was posted and complete your introduction. Like now, if you're still here, then I'm assuming that you have your introduction done and you're ready to move to your first body paragraph. So your body paragraphs are simply going to, and there's three of them, as you know, there's three body paragraphs. This is body paragraph one. It's going to focus on proving the different traits, physical, emotional, and psychological, that you are using to characterize the character that you're writing about. So for this body paragraph one, I'm going to go back to my chart. I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to go to my very first chart that I have here. Now, remember, I'm writing about Lieutenant Dan Taylor because that's the character I chose, right? And you should have three adjectives to describe physically your character. Now, I only have two because I didn't want to do it all, but I have two done as an example. But your chart should all be completed. But we're just going to be focusing on the physical chart for the first body paragraph. And again, you want adjectives to describe them physically, and then you want some examples and evidence. And then we'll talk about quotes a little bit later in this video too, as well. Okay, so let's go to this outline. So a body paragraph starts off with a topic sentence, and that is an opening sentence identifying what this paragraph will argue or prove. So if you notice, I have a starter here for you because it's the first time we're doing an essay and this is the first one you're writing. So again, I want to give you a little bit of help. So it says, one of the primary traits that makes blank a complex character in the film is his or her physical attributes. So what I need to do is I need to plug in who I'm writing about. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this line. I'm going to put in Lieutenant Dan Taylor, because that's the character that I'm writing about. And I'm going to put in his and get rid of the her because we're only talking about one person. Now, you can go ahead and ignore that. It's going to say you have grammar issues there, but you don't. This is fine. One of the primary traits that makes Lieutenant Dan Taylor a complex character in the film is his physical attributes. So what I'd like you to do now is to pause the video and complete this box for your character. Okay, if you're back, then I'm assuming you have your character down there. You might have Jenny here, you might have Forrest here, or you might have Lieutenant Dan Taylor, and then you would have his or her depending on the pronoun that properly addresses your character. So now my goal is, if I say that one of the primary traits that makes Lieutenant Dan Taylor a complex character is his physical attributes, I need to now characterize and define those physical attributes. And that's where this chart comes into play. So the first adjective I use to define Lieutenant Dan's physical attributes is handicapped. So I'm going to state that here. So it says first, Lieutenant Dan Taylor is handicapped due to losing both of his legs in a battle during the Vietnam War. So you notice I took that adjective that I used, handicap, that I got from my chart, and I even took one of my pieces of evidence, and I kind of combined them to make a nice sentence for my first example. So I'd like you to do that now with the adjective and examples that you have for your character. So pause the video and fill in this box. All right, if you're back, then I'm assuming that your box is filled and that you have your first adjective that you used there to describe and characterize your character. Okay. So now that I established that he's handicapped and he lost both his legs in the Vietnam War, I actually have to prove that with some textual evidence, right? Now, textual evidence can actually be from a movie. It could just be you telling me what happened in the story if you want. However, textual evidence is better served by having actual evidence from the text. So if you notice here, I have a quote here to support what I'm saying. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy my quote, and I'll show you how to get quotes in a little bit. And I'm going to come over here. And before I paste it, I want to write down who's speaking to who or what's happening in the situation. So Lieutenant Dan tells Forrest, and I do a comma, and then I'm going to put in my quote. Right, this is because this is Lieutenant Dan talking to Forrest when they were in the hospital. Now you notice I have some highlight background here, so I'm going to go ahead and get this off. I'm going to go ahead and remove the highlighting. I'm going to remove the bold. In fact, I'm going to go with Arial 12 here. Let me go skip that. I'm just going to clean this all up so it's nice and neat and it all is the same font. All right. So notice I say Lieutenant Dan tells Forrest, "Now I'm nothing but a cripple, a legless freak. Do you know what it's like not being able to use your legs? I had a destiny. I was supposed to die out there in the field with honor, and you cheated me out of it." So I have a quote from the story to prove that he is handicapped, right? I've now supported my example. I'm proving my case. Remember, I told you to always be proving. I'm not summarizing the story, I'm proving something. But then we get to the key part, right? Which is, why does this matter? And this is where you're just going to add your own analysis, your own commentary about why does Lieutenant Dan being handicapped matter to his character and to the story itself, right? So I'm going to say something. By losing, I'm going to actually zoom in a little bit so maybe you can see a little bit better. By losing his legs in the war, Lieutenant Dan Taylor feels like he was cheated out of a destiny to die on the field like his ancestors. Right? So I added some information about why that's important, but that's still not enough. That's only one sentence. Your commentary should be a few sentences where you really break down the significance of your example, right? So because Lieutenant Dan is handicapped, he begins to search for a new purpose in life. He takes a while to ultimately find that purpose, but eventually, Forrest helps him find a new direction and new purpose for living. And of course, I just wrote this off the top of my head. I might want to go back, reread this, and I might want to change it, edit it. Maybe I'm using some words over, and I notice I'm using the word purpose a lot, so I might want to change that. But that's all you really have to do. So what I'd like you to do right now is, in just a second, I would like you to pause the video and add a piece of textual evidence in, as well as add some commentary. Now, you might be saying, how do I find quotes? How do I find textual evidence to support what I'm saying? Well, if you were to go back to your note taking sheet and go all the way down to the very bottom, I put a link right here to a website that takes you to a bunch of quotes from Forrest Gump. So if you notice on this website here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, you can see some very popular quotes from Forrest Gump. In fact, if I scroll through it, there's so many. Almost every major quote in this movie is listed there. Right? So how do you find a quote with all of these quotes listed there, right? Like, this has got to be kind of challenging. So there's actually a little bit of a cheat way to do so. Up in the right-hand corner here, there should be three dots. Now, your screen might look different than mine, but if you click those three dots, it'll open a toolbox like this, and you'll scroll down to where it says Find. And if I click on Find, it opens up a box right here that I can type in a word and I can start to search and try to find a quote that supports what I'm saying. So I typed in the word destiny, and I found four different examples. And here's the one that I found for Lieutenant Dan Taylor. You notice this is the quote that I have. Now I'm nothing, and I took that quote right from here to help support what I'm actually saying right here. So it's this website where you find quotes. So again, you can type in anything. I could type in chocolate, and it takes me to any quote that has to do with chocolate. So there you go. So some different quotes there. I could type in. So what you have to do is you kind of have to know a word from the quote or something that was being said by that character. You don't have to know the exact quote, just something similar that was said in order to find it. Like again, off the top of my head, the word different. And then this is where Mrs. Gump is talking about how Forrest is different to the principal, right? So any word that has different. So that's how you find quotes. So it's right up here in the right hand corner, right? So what you want to do is you want to find a quote right here to support your example, and then you want to add some commentary. So it might take you some time to do this part. So pause the video and try to complete boxes A and B for your first example one. Pause the video and do that now. All right, if you're back, then I think you have your first example completely outlined like mine is. So you're ready to go to your second example. Now, what you want to do is you want to easily transition. So, over here I said first, Lieutenant Dan Taylor is handicapped. I can say second if I want, or I can say another example or another physical trait. Again, it's completely up to you how you want to word it. I'm going to go back to my chart and see what my chart said for my second trait. So my second trait about Lieutenant Dan was that he's very slovenly. So I'm going to go back here and say another physical trait of Lieutenant Dan is that he is slovenly during the middle of the film. Period. Right? So I have another example there about him being slovenly. Right? So now I say that if I'm going to say he's slovenly, then I got to give a little bit more detail on that. So I'm going to go back here. Right? So I see that he begins to take less care of himself after the war as he starts drinking heavily. Right? So I could say something like he. I should say exactly what I wrote. He begins to take less care of himself after the war and starts to drink heavily. Okay? And then once again, I'm going to need to find some evidence. So first thing you want to do is go back and put your second example in. So pause the video now and put in your second physical trait. Okay, if you're back, then I'm assuming you have your second physical trait. So once again, I went in there and I found a quote to support what I'm saying. This was a quote from Forrest, so I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to write Forrest narrates. This is something that he tells the audience. And I'm going to paste my quote there. And then once again, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to change the font, Arial 12, all that good stuff. Get rid of the bold. Clean it up nice and neat. And make sure all my font is the same. All right. And so I say, Forrest narrates, Lieutenant Dan said he was living in a hotel, and because he didn't have any legs, he spent most of the time exercising his arms. And I'm going to write, by exercising his arms, Forrest is alluding to the fact that Lieutenant Dan has been drinking often. So again, why does this matter? Why is it important? I want to elaborate a little bit more. So it is during this moment of his life that Lieutenant Dan becomes more slovenly. I'm throwing my adjective in there, and takes less care of his personal hygiene, right? Because he is, spelled hygiene wrong. Personal hygiene. Right? Now, again, that's important, but I still want to. I want to further this even more. Why is this significant? Um, it is not until later in the film when he works with Forrest and has the support of Forrest that he begins to clean himself up and become less disheveled, less disheveled. Again, they think I have the wrong Forrest, but that's okay. So see what I did there? Again, notice how my commentary is my longest part. And on both of these sections, my commentary is my longest part. So that's what I want you to do is pause now and complete your second example. All right, if you're back then, that means that you've done two, which means you're ready to move on to your third. So you can say something like a final physical trait of Lieutenant Dan that is important is that he is very, or that he is, and then I would put my third adjective in, whatever that third one is. Of course, I don't have a third one here because I didn't finish the outline, but you would put your third one in, and then you would just repeat the process that you did for the first two for your third one. And then you're ready to close out your paragraph. Again, a closing sentence is something similar to, you know, these physical traits are what define Lieutenant Dan personality throughout a portion or throughout a majority of the film. Just some kind of sentence that ends it. I mean, there really is no specific way to end your paragraph. Just want to close it out. That way you're ready to move to your second body paragraph. And we'll talk more about that in another video. Um, But by all means, if you already know how to do one body paragraph, you can really then just take it and do your second body paragraph. But obviously, your second body paragraph would then be for your second body paragraph would then be for emotional traits, right? And we'll talk about that in the second video. But if you think you're ready, you can already go and write about your second body paragraph and then go to your third body paragraph. Otherwise, just wait for the next video. Okay, and that is it. Good luck on your first body paragraph. Hopefully, this helped you, and I'll see you in the next video.